Welcome to Regeneration, a podcast about reimagining Jewish practices in a modern world. I'm Deb's Weinberg.
And I'm Eileen Levinson, and we're here to help families, friends, and chosen families revive customs with authenticity, creativity, and joy.
From Shabbat candles to everyday blessings, discover how you can weave new and old practices together across the generations to bring the people you love closer.
Hi, Debs. How are you doing today?
Hi, Eileen. It's another Shabbat.
Yes, another Friday, another Shabbat. It's great to see you. I'm thinking today about all the ways that, life changes so much once you have a kid. Before I had Ben, we used to live in Los Angeles in a very Jewish neighborhood, and it was just a joy to experience Shabbat coming in around with our neighbors and hear Shabbat songs. For the past 7 years, we've been living abroad, first in Cologne, Germany, and in London for the past 6 years. And we love our neighborhood. And we've made a lot of friends that are not Jewish. And we've had a new Shabbat ritual coming in that has been just a weekly drinks at the pub or a local wine bar. We alternate. And we get together with our friends who have lived in many places around the world. And my friend Ava, who is from Germany, introduced us to the term Stammtisch, which means standing table. Just knowing that every Friday we have these plans, but you're not obligated to show up every Friday, and there's no apologies needed if you can't make it. So we love to get together. Really, it's about recognizing that there's a break between the week and the weekend, and our non-Jewish friends are into it as well.
Eileen, I love your rituals for Shabbat. You know, rituals have really changed for me over the years. I remember growing up and we had a traditional Friday night dinner. We would always have guests. It was very beautiful and with the kind of lights glowing. And then when I went to college, I wanted to continue doing something. So I would go and light the candles on Friday night and, then join with friends for dinner. And, it was something that I wanted to find a way to do even if I was alone. And then when I had a family, I wanted to create the experience that I had growing up as well, inviting family members, inviting friends to join together to celebrate and to, as you said, take a pause and make it something different than it was the rest of the week. I think that was really the importance of it.
So since having Ben, it's been really important to me to do what I can to bring in some Judaism in the very non-Jewish life that we live much of the time. And I started to sing Shabbat songs to him on Fridays. I've brought in Tigger, our Yiddish Tigger, who sings Jewish songs. And I have loved now that he's old enough to be able to go to Tat Shabbats on a Saturday morning. And I think the cynical part of me that was more concerned with depth and meaning and deep intellectual thought, probably thought before having a child, would have thought that I would have no patience for a Tat Shabbat. But I have to say I love it. It actually makes Shabbat really simple and meaningful and joyous. And we're getting to know other little ones and their parents. And we go through the Shabbat service or a variation of it in about 30 minutes. There's a song that we sing in England. It goes, God gave me the 10 commandments, 10 commandments, 10 commandments. So it's the very British accent on those A's. But actually, my husband and I are remarking that it's actually the best and most simple explanation of what the 10 commandments actually are, because they put it in terms that are all about caring for one another and caring for yourself. So I'm finding myself just loving this very simple 30-minute Shabbat that we do. There is grape juice. There's challah. It's a time where I actually get to put aside some of my over-intellectualism that I can get into and just experience the simple joys of a playful Shabbat with my son and husband.
Eileen, you're reminding me of, now that I'm a grandparent and the Shabbats that I have with our grandchildren, that they bring home songs from school. So one attends a day school, and he has this song that I love, and it's like Friday, it's the end of the week, it's Shabbat. And he goes through this wonderful ritual of, Eileen, it's on you to show your Shabbat moves. And then everybody gets dancing. It's like, go Eileen, go Eileen, go Eileen, go Eileen. And it's so fun to watch the grandkids. We have this ritual of passing around a tzedakah box. So they hand out the coins to put in the box. They love, from when they're 1 year old, they can actually put the coins in the box. There are just so many fun things, and it's joyful. We also have a ritual where we talk about the Parsha of the week, so the Torah portion, and it's done very simply, but we have a conversation, and it kind of sets a tone.
I want to transition and talk about our guest today. Rabbi Adam Greenwald has been a friend of mine for many years. I met him through his wife, Ann Ramatka, and she is a curator, an art consultant, originally in Los Angeles, now in Orange County. And Adam came to me in at least 10 years ago when he was the director of the Intro to Judaism program at AJU. And he was responsible for creating a course and the workbook to help people who were interested in exploring Judaism. It wasn't a conversion course. It was just people who often were in interfaith or mixed heritage couples, or wanted to, maybe had forgotten a lot about Judaism or felt that they weren't connected and wanted to reconnect, would join his class. And before I even started working with him, I was a guest at their Shabbat table or the Passover table many times. And it was amazing the community that they would build of people that were learning together. And so Adam came to me as a designer to design this workbook with him. When Adam and I were working on this project together, it felt that we both made each other's work better. We started to treat our working relationship as a Havruta. And we've talked about Havruta, Debs, you and I being ritual Havruta, and that feeling of joy that we would have working and learning together. And so Adam and I had a very similar experience where we were breaking down the basics of Judaism and making it accessible and using design to tell the story. And we eventually created some videos too. And I love the way that Adam could frame time and space and meaning for us and ground us. And so he's been a dear friend for many years. And when we started talking about this podcast, I was very excited to have him on and help ground our audience in the time that we're in right now. And as he does so beautifully, help us find some light in these times. I think that as Adam and I were building this Intro to Judaism course book, and what I really learned from him as a rabbi, and also seeing him as a parent, it's that we can hold really complex, deep ideas and express them with simplicity and clarity. You can go through all of the motions of trying to be a perfect parent or do all of the Jewish practices to the nth degree. But ultimately, finding those simple moments to really connect in whatever way you can, wherever you are.
My name is Adam Greenwald. I'm a rabbi in Orange County, California at Congregation B'nai Israel. Before coming here as the rabbi, I spent a decade running the Miller Introduction to Judaism program out of American Jewish University and got to work with Eileen on creation of a curriculum that's used all across North America. So it's really, really awesome to be together with you in this conversation and excited to talk all things grandparents, and joyful Judaism.
I think what's really nice about, Adam, your work and what Debs and I are really passionate about is making Judaism meaningful and fresh and accessible and bite-sized while still creating entry points to go deeper in meaning. Adam, I've always been really impressed in how you welcome new people into community with no pressure to become Jewish or to have a certain level of observance. And in the time that I knew you in LA, I've seen your community just grow and grow and grow. And all of the people that you've inspired to become Jewish in their own way is really amazing.
Well, there really is nothing better for a teacher than getting to meet curious people. And what I valued the most in the 10 years that I ran the Introduction to Judaism program was just being in the presence of curiosity. People showed up because they were interested in exploring something. And wherever that wound up leading them, whether that wound up leading them to the mikveh and to conversion or to a deepening understanding of their Jewish partner without themselves converting, or if they were Jewish by birth, but they felt like they never got the manual. And they were like, I've always wanted to know what that button does. Like, what is Tu B'Shvat? And how do I access a Shabbat dinner? All of that was really joyful work to be able to help open those doors.
So when we were thinking about your work and how you introduce people to Judaism, I think about how you're so great at rooting us in the present moment. So for your students and in so many of our conversations and the wisdom that you often share with by email or online with your friends, you're able to time travel with us, where you can both see the expansiveness of Jewish history and the uniqueness of the moment that we're in. So how would you describe where we are in Jewish history, in American Jewish life?
I take a great deal of solace in the fact that Jewish history is simultaneously a story of incredibly hard times and a story of persistent light that only shines brighter against a dark backdrop. I was just teaching my Intro to Judaism students this past weekend class on medieval history, and I was trying to make it relevant to them, these figures and conversations that happened hundreds of years ago, even 1,000 years ago. And what I tried to impress was this idea that in this time period that was a period of such tremendous insecurity for Jews, the literal dark ages for the whole world, and particularly dark in so many ways for our people, against this night sky, there are so many persistent stars. There are these incredible points of light, these thinkers and poets and mystics and scholars and creatives who continued to shine out wisdom that makes its way down to us and shapes the Jewish conversation for a world that they couldn't have possibly imagined. And so that was true 1,000 years ago and 500 years ago. And it, I hope and believe, will be true when our descendants look back at our times today, times with tremendous insecurity, tremendous polarization, times in which anti-Semitism is reaching such scary levels for us and for our kids and grandkids, times when the world feels just teetering at a precipice on almost every axis. That idea that it is against the backdrop of hard times that Jews in particular, humans always, and Jews really in particular, have chosen to commit all the more so to sharing light.
What practices, Jewish practices or otherwise, other rituals, what are the moments in your life where you're able to create meaning for yourself amidst all of this?
I think anything that roots us in community is a tool for building resilience. Us by ourselves are very small and very easily subsumed into the darkness and tempted into fear or despair. We get stronger when we are linked arm in arm with other people who are going through the same wilderness. And so anything that brings people together, whether that's around a table or in a synagogue sanctuary or for some kind of moment of celebration or solidarity, as long as it is rooted in community, I think it is the medicine for right now. Like, I came in after the pandemic was winding down. They had just spent, a couple of years holding community together through insane times of separation. And here I was waltzing in 2022 as restrictions were lifting. The first set of high holidays after my first year, and bam, Simchat Torah comes, and it's October 7th. And so these last 2.5 years of navigating Jewish communal leadership during such times of heartbreak has been really wrenchingly difficult, and also at the same time, profoundly inspiring to see the way in which our sanctuary has filled up in people who have chosen to lean into their Jewishness and lean into each other, and who have felt this sense that maybe at one time they felt like they could be Jewish on their own, but now they really need community to help them feel able to navigate all that the world throws at us. So any ritual which grounds us in community and makes us feel linked to one another gives me a tremendous amount of strength.
So we want to zoom out, because imagine that we have a newcomer coming in and they want to understand the Jewish sense of time. What are some of the key ideas that you share in how Judaism helps us mark the passage of time?
I have been really influenced for years by a wonderful book called The Jewish Way by Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, one of the leading lights of modern Orthodox Judaism in the last century and the beginning of this one. He writes in this book that the Jewish calendar can be seen essentially as a curriculum, as a teaching tool to transmit the most important Jewish stories, ideas, and values in an embodied, lived kind of way. I share with my Intro to Judaism students all the time that when we are sitting in class and they're listening to me talk, they are learning in the worst possible way for human beings to learn. Right? Sitting there listening to somebody else talk and writing down what they say is a terrible way for your brain to absorb information. If I am doing my job at just my absolute best and they are totally focused and well caffeinated, they might retain maybe 5 to 10% of what I'm teaching them. Most of it is going to go in one ear, out the other. It's going to, with the best of intentions, just be lost in the noise. We don't learn very well by listening or even by reading. We human beings learn by doing. We are active learners. And the holidays provide us with active opportunity on a regular basis to go back through our most important stories, ideas, and values and to put them into practice, to taste them, to reenact them, to build a sukkah and go live outside like we're wandering our way through a wilderness on the way to the promised land, relighting lights just like the Maccabees would have when they entered into the ruined temple. We do things in these moments that help us to feel connected and to get those stories not just in our heads, but in our hearts and in our guts, in our kishkes, as my grandparents would say, in our innermost part. I think of Jewish time really as having a teaching agenda, as being a brilliantly designed classroom that we are always living in, that is reinforcing for us over and over and over again the things that we can't afford as a people to forget.
How in our daily lives do we mark time? How do we create space for what is sacred and meaningful and what is holy versus what is just the mundane material work that we need to do to survive?
Of course, Jewish time is all the more interested in not just the big annual occasions, but the much more regular observances. And the most obvious and most significant of those is Shabbat. Taking one day out of the week to restore, reconnect, recommit to what matters is an essential practice, because we are all so busy and moving so fast. Giving us the opportunity one day a week to embrace a different pace and to shift our focus from the world of what we need to do and produce in order to demonstrate worth, but into the world of what we are and who we have around us at our inner core. That's an essential corrective. So at barest minimum, you want to bring in a sacred dimension into your family life. Make Shabbat in some way special. That doesn't mean needing to completely shut down for 25 hours or observe every rule in its smallest detail, but that does mean consciously committing to making one day a week a day of rest and reconnection and restoration as fuel for the other 6 days and as a respite from a pace that can make us all really crazy and can drive us away from each other and from ourselves. Shabbat is an essential ritual technology for helping us to slow down and take stock in what matters. And even beyond the weekly ritual of Shabbat, I think Judaism offers this sense that even small moments can be made holy if we bring kavanah, if we bring intention to them. And that can be in the form of a practice that you might find in one of these books, a practice of saying a blessing before eating or reciting Modeh Ani, the prayer that says, I'm grateful when you wake up, or the Shema when you go to sleep. But it can also just be in just bringing an additional measure of awareness and gratitude and a set of glasses that help us see the world as holy and not just mundane, to something that doesn't have an explicitly ritual moment. My 6.5-year-old right now still wants me to snuggle up with her every night before she goes to sleep. And I don't know how much longer this is going to last, but right now she really wants, after the book is done, for me to lay down and cuddle with her. And she always reminds me, she says, just remember, Daddy, before she rolls over, you have to stay until I'm asleep. And I guess there is a way in which I could think to myself, this is obviously incredibly sweet, but there's like a deeper level of gratitude for the blessing of that moment and the sense of its finitude, that it won't go on forever, and the sense that it's just sacred to just be present with her as her little body relaxes and she drifts off into dreams. That I think working Jewish spiritual muscles on a regular basis helps us to recognize the sacred, even in moments that aren't explicitly labeled as such, being from our tradition.
There's so much about Judaism that helps us root the past, who we are now, who we hope to be in the future. Judaism helps us focus on who's the better version of ourselves that we want to be for our children, for our friends, for our community. And what are some ways that your Jewish, whether it's your Shabbat practice or holiday practices, help you reconnect you with the better version of yourself?
So I made a little video with you years ago for the Intro to Judaism program, and I continue to show it to students, in which we were talking about the high holidays, and we were talking about the image of those iconic signs in the British subway system, in the tube, that say, mind the gap. And this idea that at High Holy Days, what we are meant to be doing is to mind the gap between the kind of partner that I want to be to my spouse and the kind of partner that I sometimes am, right? I want to be present and loving and attentive and generous, and I'm that sometimes, but I'm also distracted and grouchy and tired and, going through the motions other times. The kind of parent I want to be, the kind of rabbi I want to be, the kind of human that I want to be. And the invitation with the High Holy Days, but not just the High Holy Days. The Jewish tradition says you're supposed to be doing this process of tshuva, of returning every single day of your life, that you're always supposed to be paying attention to what is the gap between what is and what could be, and what can I be doing to try to bridge that consciously. That's hard work. And I don't think I'm ever gonna fully get to a place where I'm like, you know what? I have arrived. I am the person that I always dreamt that I could be. But it's in the striving that there's nobility. If I have a single favorite line from the entire Jewish textual tradition, from all of the books behind you and behind me, it's the line from Pirkei Avot that says, "B'makom she'en anashim hishtadel lihiot ben adam." In a place where there isn't humanity, strive all the more so to be a person. And it's that word hishtadel, strive, that I connect to the most in that line. That our job is to be constantly working toward better. And that isn't a really relaxing way to be a person. Judaism is not a religion of serenity. It doesn't offer us, a chance to just totally lay down our burdens and surrender. It instead gives us kind of the opposite. It gives us this constant provocation to be working and striving toward better. And even Shabbat, which is the pause in service of the striving. It's the break that you need to refuel so that you can go back to work.
What are some bite-sized ways that you've found to start to make meaning in your life and strive to be the better person?
I mean, I guess there are two approaches to that impossible dream. My favorite show is The Man of La Mancha. But it's playing locally, and I'm hoping to get tickets to take Anne and Gracie this week, because I love that idea of striving on the noble quest. Even if you're never going to get there, there's nobility in the work. That can be paralyzing, but only if we expect perfection of ourselves. If we tell ourselves the story that says, if I can't get to the ideal, it's not worth trying, or I'm a terrible person or a terrible Jew. That's a story that we tell ourselves that roots us in guilt and shame and generally produces very little results. The story that I think we need to be telling ourselves is a story that says every step that we take is worthy. Every step that we take in the direction is worthy. And so take another step. Challenge yourself to take another step in whatever way is going to work and is going to be reasonable for you, and take pride in that step. And then once you've taken that step, take another one. I think that all or nothing thinking for almost all of us leads to nothing. If we can only keep either totally kosher or it's not worth keeping kosher at all, then most of us are not going to do anything at all. If we can only keep 25 hours of Shabbat, or it's ruined and we haven't done it, most of us aren't going to keep Shabbat at all. Have one way in which Judaism speaks to how we consume and how we nourish ourselves. Have one way in which we pause and make Shabbat different and sacred. And then once we feel like we've mastered that one way, stretch for what's the next way. I don't believe that Judaism ever lets us feel like we have done everything that we can. I think it always is encouraging of us, beckoning us, inviting us to take that next step, not out of a sense of guilt, but out of a sense that this is a really holy way to live a life of always continuing to push ourselves toward a new goal, toward a new vision. I have students who are working toward conversion do a worksheet with me that has like major areas of Jewish life. So Shabbat is one of them. Community involvement is one of them. Tikkun Olam, helping to make the world a better place, is one of them. Learning is one of them. And I asked them to describe a snapshot of where they are now. What does your Shabbat look like? What does your community involvement look like? In what way are you growing intellectually as a Jew? In what way are you giving as a Jew? And then to articulate a short-term goal and a long-term goal. What is one way in the next 6 months that you could feel proud of, that you could take your Shabbat a little bit deeper, or that you could add something to your learning, or that you could give more? And then dream big. Like, what could you imagine a year down the line, 3 years down the line, 10 years down the line, that you may or may not get to, but you're giving yourself a North Star to point yourself in the direction of in all of these different areas. Basic, obnoxious self-help. Write a short-term goal and a long-term goal. But few of us actually do that with our Jewish lives. And think about, like, what is the next thing that I want to be experimenting with? And what could I imagine Shabbat looking like? Whether or not I get there, but what could I imagine? That's a generative way of approaching all of these practices, and a way which is not exterior driven, like the rabbi is going to tell you what's next, but rather is much more intrinsic and comes from you knowing your own life best. What for me would represent a step forward in this area?
I was actually thinking in this conversation, you have spoken so much about striving and urgency and working towards goodness. And sometimes we need to go easy on ourselves. And it reminded me about your daughter. Can you talk about your daughter's name?
Yeah. So our daughter is Grace, named for my grandmother, her great-grandmother. When she was born, I talked to an elderly Holocaust survivor who is a good friend and had been a board member of the Introduction to Judaism program. And I told her the name, and she kind of wrinkled her nose and said, "Is Grace Jewish? Do we believe in grace?" And I said, well, first of all, my grandmother was Grace. And so it's Jewish, at least that far back in my family. And second of all, yes, we absolutely do. Our Torah is full of the word chen, which gives us the Hebrew name Chana, this idea of a love that goes beyond what we deserve, a love that is embracing and inclusive and forgiving and gathers us in. And that God, at God's best, is a source of chen, a source of grace. And we, at our best, are a source of grace to one another, knowing that we're never going to get it all right, that there is no end to the striving, and meeting each other on the road from here to there, rather than expecting that anybody is going to make it all the way. Certainly, they're not going to make it all the way by themselves. The only way forward is together.
How has your experience of fatherhood changed your practice of Judaism?
I mean, I am one of those people who is unapologetically smitten with my child. It is just largely pictures of Grace, who is 6 years old but missing 8 teeth. So she tells everybody, I'm missing more teeth than I'm years old. I am in love with fatherhood. And I think that, having her makes these ritual moments more fun. It is more fun to light Hanukkah candles with a kid who takes delight in it than it ever was before, or to see her get up and do the 4 questions for the first time last year was an unforgettable moment for me. And it's also an impetus to keep working for a better world for her. I now have a different level of a stake in the future because, God willing, she is going to continue on long past while I'm here. And I really want her to inherit both a Jewish world, an America, a planet which is sustainable and flourishing.
Are there practices at home, or is there a ritual that represents your family values and sensibility?
I love lighting Shabbat candles together with Anne and Grace. We take our hands and draw them 3 times toward our eyes and do what we learned in her first preschool, which is to say, once for our family, once for our friends, once for our whole community. Drawing in the light for our little unit, for our extended unit of people we care about, and for our bigger context of community that we are embedding her within. That's a nice moment, and there's just something so intensely adorable about a little kid burying their head, their face in their hands, and then popping them open and seeing the Shabbat light.
Last question. Is there a ritual or practice in Judaism that you feel is in most need of a refresh? You want to spend some time thinking about how to redo it, or you want to offer some ideas for people to refresh how they're practicing it?
I think the biggest mistake that many of us make around Jewish holidays, I think about the high holy days in particular, but I think it's true about any of the holidays, is not spending enough time in the preparation before the holiday begins and expecting that we'll be able to derive the full spiritual benefit on the day that the holiday arrives. So I think about this with high holy days, right? This is this time of year in which we're supposed to be thinking about transforming our relationships and minding all of the gaps in our lives. And for many of us, we start that work when we arrive at synagogue services. And we try to do so many things at once. We try to do all of this internal reflection and external repair work at the same time as we're saying tons of words in ancient Hebrew and a Yom Kippur being totally hungry. And we leave it feeling frustrated, like we weren't able to do everything that was being asked of us. But that's because we were trying to cram it all into one 24-hour period, as opposed to taking time in this rhythm of the calendar that's meant to give us a substantial amount of time to really reflect so that the holiday itself becomes the last mile of the marathon rather than the entire race. And I think same thing with Passover. The invitation that you gave to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people with Haggadot was the invitation to not just show up at the Passover Seder table and expect that you can fully engage with all of those themes while you are, waiting for the food and minding your guests and everything else, but to take the time in the lead up to really think intentionally about what is going into the Passover Seder. What are the elements that are most speaking to me this year and to our world this year? And that way being able to show up at Passover fully immersed in all that makes this holiday so transformative and powerful, dedicate the time of the actual Seder to the exploration of it with other people. I think we don't give enough time and attention to the preparation work that it takes to make these moments all that they possibly can be. And we know that, whenever there's an event that happens and it seems smooth and effortless, it's smooth and effortless because somebody put in a tremendous amount of effort ahead of time to get it there. Whenever there is a moment which is particularly meaningful and spiritual and powerful, it's very rare that it happens completely spontaneously. It happens through the preparation. It says in the Talmud that you should make the entire week a pilgrimage to Shabbat. And that all the way through the week, there should be an intention of how are you getting yourself ready and set up to have the most beautiful, the most delicious, the most connected Shabbos, rather than trying to pull Shabbat together in between the end of work on Friday and the time that the sun goes down. So whatever we can do to lean into helping people to prepare and approach these moments in Jewish time with intentionality and purpose and the tools already in place, the more the actual moment can sing.
So even though sometimes it can feel like more work, the more we put in, the greater reward we receive.
The reward is always proportionate to the effort. And I think the point to emphasize is that the effort is meant to be joyful. It's not meant to be, oh yeah, I've got so many things to do. It's so difficult. The effort, the work is, wow, I have this opportunity to be building towards something beautiful. And when it's Wednesday and I'm exhausted and I feel like I can't possibly make it through this week, to already have my mind on Shabbat hopefully gives me the fuel to get across the finish line. If Judaism is just a list of endless tasks, and again, a story about how I can never possibly do it all, it'll be a tremendous burden to carry around. If it's a set of endless opportunities to make sacred time and sacred relationships and a source of community and resilience and a treasure trove of inspiring wisdom, yes, it's huge and deep and comprehensive. It touches all the different aspects of our life, but in such a positive way.
And you can spend your whole life doing it. You're not going to create the perfect Shabbat in your first week or have the most holy feeling your first high holidays.
And everyone should be better than the one that came before it. And ideally, there's no such thing as a perfect Shabbat. There's just moving deeper and deeper into what Shabbat can be. I tell people the reason that a High Holy Day service is 6 hours long is because the most you can really expect is 15 minutes of really deep spiritual connection, but there are 1,000 people in the room and everybody's going to have a different 15 minutes. So it's got to be 6 hours so that all 1,000 people can have their 15 minutes. If somebody expects that they're going to spend 6 hours in a Yom Kippur service in spiritual rapture, I mean, I don't know how that's possible to do unless you have taken a significant dose of something before you get to the synagogue, right? That's not a sustainable way to be. The goal is not 6 hours of rapturous spiritual connection. The goal is finding 15 powerful minutes in which you open up to feel something or feel empowered to make a change. The goal of Shabbat is not that every single Shabbat is going to be the most beautiful taste of heaven in your life. But unless you sit every morning, you might miss the time that would. Not every Shabbat is going to be transformative, but unless you make an effort to mark Shabbat in a consistent way, it'll never be transformative. There's a line that I keep quoting to my congregation for the last couple of years from Bell Hooks, who says, we can only build the world we can imagine. We can only build the world that we can imagine. Just because you can imagine something doesn't mean you can have it, right? That's New Age nonsense. If you can just imagine it, you can be it. If you can picture yourself rich, you'll be rich. Not everybody who can picture themselves rich will be rich, and you can't imagine away, your tumors. It's not a failure of positive thinking if you get sick. But the opposite is true, that if you can't imagine it, you can't build it. If you can't imagine a more peaceful future, you are damning yourself, your children, and your grandchildren to a constant state of violence. If you can't imagine a better way of being, you'll never get there. And so what if we see these various rituals as opportunities to imagine every week around a Shabbat table? What could real connection feel like and deep rest? An opportunity every Passover. What does freedom actually look like? And then it gives us something to strive for, to build towards, to hope for, that we can put together piece by piece. Whether or not we ever fully get there, it gives us a beacon. It gives us a thing to be directing our attention towards that helps lift us up, give us hope.
That's really beautiful. And I think to close out, thinking about the beginning of our conversation, we talked about Jewish time and where we are in Jewish time and looking for the lights and the stars in the sky. And what you've taught us today is that in these practices, and even in the daily practices, taking the time to imagine the better world, you're creating moments of light in what can be a dark day.
We always have the opportunity to seek something better and to build it together. We always have the invitation from this tradition to be reaching towards God and towards each other. And we're allowed to do it bit by bit. We don't have to do it all at once. But it's wonderful to live a life in a way that says there's always more light to be discovered. That's a sweet way to live a life, and it's such an antidote to despair.
So thanks for listening to our interview with Adam Greenwald, and thank you, Adam, for joining us on the show. I'm still thinking about Adam's idea that there's no such thing as a perfect Shabbat, but that there's beauty in that. We're moving deeper and deeper into what Shabbat can be. I love how he said that the reason the high holiday services are 6 hours long is because you can expect 15 minutes of deep spiritual connection, and everyone's will come at a different time. The goal is finding 15 powerful minutes and reaching for that and being open to it. Wait, 1, 2, 3. It's Friday, it's Shabbat, it's the end of the week, it's a great day. Shay, it's on you to make your Shabbat move. Go Shay, go Shay, go Shay, go Shay, go Shay, and sit back down.
Woo! Happy Friday! Shabbat Shalom, everybody!
All right.
Woo.
Okay. Thank you.
This first season of Regeneration is a 10-episode journey. We invite you to join us every Friday to explore new ideas for Jewish ritual, hear from an inspiring guest, and receive tips to practice on your own. You can visit us at recustom.com/regeneration to download all of your guidebooks, see the episode list, and sign up for our newsletter so you stay up to date on everything happening with Regeneration.
Regeneration is a partnership between Recustom and the Jewish Grandparents Network,
and is hosted by Eileen Levinson and Debra Weinberg, and produced by Josh Gilbert and Kate Mishkin.
Follow the Regeneration podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week. See you then.